As I have mentioned many times before in these podcasts, what you are trying to do in history is to write an argument. That is why A-level history is valued by universities when you're applying to do things like law. If you were a lawyer trying to put forward a case, then you would need evidence. Now, in history, you want to stand out in order to get the best marks. That means having something a bit special, and that's what this podcast's all about. You want something that makes your paper stand out. But let's face it, let's use a bit of logic here. If, as I do very often, if you give 30 people the same question, then whoever marks them, me, if I've given the paper out, is going to read the same evidence in, I would say, most answers. If there's the odd person who really takes it by the scruff of the neck and tries to do something that stands out, then that's going to help them to get better marks. It's going to make the teacher or the examiner, whoever's looking at it, stand up and take notice. One way that you can stand out is by being resilient and responsible, and by that I mean is going to find your own quotes and statistics to back up your argument with the most impressive evidence. It can also be the most rewarding way to do history, a bit different from just listening to the things the teacher says or using the textbook. You've actually gone out there and done some of your own proper history. And the goal here is for me to read it and go, oh, I didn't know that, because that happens. Surprisingly, I don't know everything that ever happened. People seem to think that history teachers do that, especially in pub quizzes, but they don't. It might seem difficult, of course, and that is because it is. You're going to read a lot of things you don't understand. I'm a history teacher, and I can promise you that I still read things that I don't understand when I'm preparing history lessons and using history books. If that happens, you've got two options. Option number one is just not to worry about it, miss out the bits you don't understand, and focus on the bits that you do. You can even cover those bits up if it's stressing you out. I admit I use option one most often because I'm usually pushed for time, and I just go, don't know what that means, not quite sure what this historian's trying to say, not going to be worried about it because there's more to get out of this source. Option two is to stop and to look it up or ask somebody who might know the answer. Finding this stuff and reading proper history is not for people who give up easily. But what's the point in doing things that you can already do? Give it a go and have a look at the targets following this to make sure you do it right. I've put some examples in the targets as well of where you might find some of this stuff, and you know, I would be so impressed if somebody was to come to me with a history book or a primary source and have used it in their answer. Again, especially if you're in lower school, below the sixth form, because that's when you're really going to fly. If you're in sixth form, well, I'm telling you now, and I'm not just saying this because I want to torture you, I promise you, those students who get hold of history books and start reading and trying to understand for themselves and climb some of these hurdles of understanding themselves without the teacher always having to be there, they're the people who go the furthest. I had a student this year, 2016, summer 2016, who at the start of year 12 was getting U's and E's and was in tears. But she didn't give up. She read loads of history books, and by the end she was writing A-grade essays, and it was not really anything to do with what I was doing. It was just her attitude and her willingness to go and have a go with things and not to give up and to be demoralised. And she was in bits at the start, but it was her hard work and her attitude and her willingness to do things that were difficult that helped her, so that by the end, even though at the start she wasn't really understanding those history books she was grabbing, by the end she was coming out with things which I had no idea about.